Chapter 281, A Strategic Repositioning. It took us less than a minute to burst through the tree line and stumble into the clearing where our group had set up camp for the last 2 days. The fog here was much thinner than in the woods behind us. As soon as Julie and I stepped through, huffing and puffing, every eye in the camp turned toward us in varying degrees of concern. Michael and Kong were still in the middle of discussing whatever topic they had been discussing before we left. Meanwhile, Alexia and Lily seemed to have returned from their hunting trip and brought back a tentacled millipede for dinner. Thankfully, I didn't think we would have the pleasure to eat it tonight. Michael looked like he was about to walk over with a frown. But before he could, Ray and Vince came tumbling out of the woods after us, both shouting over each other. Go, 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 move, you idiots, it's right behind us. By then, I had caught my breath. The ground started shaking again as the white wall of mist surged closer, rising higher than the massive trees and swallowing the forest whole. Everyone in the clearing stopped in their tracks. What is that? Lily breathed, taking an anxious step back. I asked you guys to bring firewood. What the hell did you bring? Michael exclaimed, grabbing his head. Even Alexia's face drained of color, and that girl almost never looked afraid. Her sightless gray eyes widened as she stared aimlessly into the mist. With her origin card floating above her head, her voice trembled as she spoke. It's alive. All of it. The fog is emitting an aura that suggests it's a singular living creature. As if on cue, the air turned colder. The fire in the middle of the camp snuffed out like something unseen had sucked the heat from it. Even our breath turned white. The temperature drop was sudden and drastic. Ray stumbled to a stop beside me, slightly bent over and panting. Long story short, giant monster made of mist, hates us, we ran, crab's dead. Now hurry and pack up. Kong didn't need to be told twice. He was already shoving food packs and supplies into the dimensional storage chest. Lily moved beside him in perfect sync, grabbing what she could. Michael turned to me, looking a bit calmer than the rest. Do you have a plan? Yes. Run. I pointed over my shoulder at Julie and Vince, the two traders who were already halfway across the clearing. Follow those cowards. Alexia blinked. But you once said you never run. I paused and rubbed my chin thoughtfully. Quote. True. Then let's call it. I gestured toward the retreating pair with a shrug, a strategic repositioning. The blind girl gave me a look halfway between exasperated disbelief and bewildered amusement. So, running. Before I could reply, the mist reached us. But it didn't simply roll in like mist is supposed to. Oh no, it burst into the clearing like an avalanche. Trees bent and cracked under the sheer pressure as the air turned from chilly to almost freezing. Move, Michael shouted. I stomped my foot on the ground and called upon my innate power. The earth in front of us heaved, and a colossal wall of stone shot up from the soil, forming a barrier between us and the oncoming storm of fog. Unfortunately, it didn't buy us much time. We started running as fast as we could, but the damn mist kept creeping along the edges of the colossal stone wall, seeping through every crack and pouring after us. The forest became a blur around us as we ran, slowly engulfed in the mist. Everything in our vision turned to white and gray. The only sound I could hear anymore was the hard pounding of my own heart in my ears. Then, the mist monster itself decided now was time to make its grand appearance and hunt us down. A tall and thin silhouette came into our view, its inky black figure sharply contrasting the dense white fog all around. The creature's limbs were jointed all wrong, and its movements seemed eerily unnatural. I dashed in to attack it head-on, but the beast simply faded away. Then it reappeared elsewhere. Michael rushed over and swung his longsword at it this time, but it slipped away just like before. It continued to emerge and vanish within the mist, lunging from multiple directions all at once, its claws flashing and its monstrous screeches rattling us to the core. Predicting its moves was nearly impossible, especially since it could make itself intangible and render all our attacks useless. I won't lie, we would have been dead within the first few minutes. There was nothing we could have done to change the outcome. We couldn't hold our positions, and we were losing composure, making mistakes. The beast was strong. One clean hit from it could kill most of the people in our group. It wasn't a fair fight. No, actually, it wasn't a fight at all. We weren't one step ahead of death, we were one step behind. Thankfully, we had a seer on our side. Lily's eyes glowed intensely violet as she shouted, left first, then front. Michael and I turned just as the creature lashed out. His blade cleaved through the air where the monster had just been, while my transmuted spikes shot up from the ground to block the next strike. For a while, the two of us managed to keep the mist monster at bay, Barely, until it changed direction. None of us had noticed that Ray was lagging behind at the back of our group. His severe blood loss made him sluggish and dulled his reflexes. The monster decided to capitalize on this gap in our formation. It dispersed into the mist and darted straight for him. Ray looked ahead and froze, his mind running too slowly to react. He managed to raise one hand, but it was too late. The monster's claws were already slashing down toward him. He was just a step out of reach for any of us to intervene in time. Someone gasped. Vince shouted his name. ... And then a blur of orange streaked through the fog. It was Alexia. She moved faster than any of us. Somehow, she had been aware of Ray's position, thanks to her extraordinary spatial awareness, I guess. She had already placed herself in a position where she could reach him quickly in case anything went wrong. And when it did, she slammed into him, twisted midair, and the two of them rolled once before she lifted him up and kept running, her arm cradling him in a perfect princess carry. Ray blinked up at her, utterly dumbstruck. His face was mere inches from hers. Wow. Alexia didn't even look at him. Stop bleeding on me. I managed to catch a glimpse of the way Ray was looking at Alexia, as if he was finally seeing her properly for the first time. Up until that point, she had only been just another highborn girl occupying space around him. Cute, sure, but nothing that caught his eye. Plus, she was blind. What was the point of pursuing a girl who couldn't swoon over his drop-dead good looks every waking minute of the day? So he'd never considered her as someone of romantic interest, or even someone worth flirting with. But this time, when he looked at her, he truly saw her. He noticed that her orange curls were a shade too close to tangerine. He inhaled her soft, citrusy natural fragrance. He felt just how delicate her shoulders were beneath her tunic. This time, when he looked, he genuinely appreciated her. And let me tell you, it was almost worth being chased by a greater spirit beast just to witness that moment. It was almost worth the pain, blood, and trouble. It was almost worth the fear of death to see him fall for her so foolishly. That moment wasn't anything dramatic or flashy like you'd see in old rom-coms. There were no slow-motion stares or grand orchestral swells in the background. It was much quieter than that, like a spark created between flint and steel, gone almost too quickly to notice but still there, buried deep, kindling. And Ray's heart had already begun to fan that little spark, probably even writing poetry about it too. I wanted to say something, maybe congratulate him for finding love in the middle of a death zone, but like everyone else, I was too busy running for my fucking life. The wind ruffled our hair as we sprinted through the forest. The mist kept roaring behind us, and the monster continued screeching somewhere in the haze, unleashing a flurry of erratic attacks. We kept dodging, and we didn't stop. Chapter 282, Persistent Chase. A full day. We ran for a full day. And by ran, I mean we stumbled through that hellish jungle while being chased by a creature of mist that refused to die, dissipate, or even take a break like any civilized monster. The forest blurred into an endless smear of greens and grays. Our boots tore through mud and roots, our breaths were reduced to exhausted gasps, and our lungs burned with the fury of the damned. By now, we had managed to outrun the avalanche of white mist several times. But every few hours, it would rise and swallow us whole once again. Once trapped inside its fog, the monster would materialize around us randomly and attack us repeatedly until we somehow managed to escape again. Then, the process would repeat. We'd run, the monster would give chase and catch up to us as soon as we slowed down even a little, it would attack, we'd defend, we'd escape, and repeat. Everyone was beyond tired at this point. Ray's back wound had reopened twice. Lily had patched him up both times on the run with trembling hands. Vince wheezed like an asthmatic accordion every 5 minutes. And Juliana was still limping but somehow keeping pace, her injured leg wrapped tightly in torn gauze. I don't even know what hour it was when I realized something was off. Because every time we slowed down and dared to look back, the mist was still there, crawling and creeping, always at the edge of sight but never far enough to give us hope. At first, I thought we were just unlucky. But then, when the pattern repeated again and again, realization dawned on me like a sick joke. The bastard isn't chasing us, I said after a long silence, huffing slightly. It's persistence hunting us. Michael, jogging beside me, groaned as if I had just given voice to his suspicions. Yeah, I noticed that too. It's wearing us down until we either make a mistake or use up all our essence, so it can feast without us putting up a fight. After hours of fighting and running, our essence had indeed dwindled significantly. So if that was really the mist monster's goal, then its plan was surely working. It was only after a little over 36 hours of continuous running that we came across a clearing and found what seemed to be an ancient village. Or at least what used to be one. The place looked like it had been carved straight out of the earth itself, full of mud huts crafted into the land, half swallowed by moss and vines, with metallic fences long rusted and collapsed, and hollow windows that stared out like the sockets of dead eyes. The air here smelled exactly the same as it did everywhere else in the forest, faintly of damp soil and rotting leaves. If it were any other time, I'd probably be curious about the architectural style of a long-extinct alien civilization. I'd probably want to explore a bit and come up with theories. But right now, the only theory I cared about was whether those huts had doors that locked. We stumbled through the village like a pack of half-dead refugees. The mist still lingered on the horizon, distant yet constant. Michael used his X-ray vision card, and Alexia used her aura sense to make sure there weren't any other eldritch monsters dwelling in this lovely place. We wanted to avoid any, stuck between a rock and a hard place, situation, after all. Inside, Michael said finally, pointing toward the largest hut, one with half its roof missing but walls sturdy enough to at least provide shelter. Move. No one argued or hesitated. Not even me. That's how dire things were. We crowded inside, and even in the midst of our ordeal, I had to take a moment to appreciate the interior. Not only was this place still standing after thousands of years of abandonment, it really looked like everything had naturally sculpted into existence from the ground up. There were no joints, hinges, or visible seams anywhere at all, just a smooth, flowing structure, as if the whole hut had been molded from living clay rather than built by hand. The walls curved gently into the floor, which sloped into what might have once been furniture, benches, low tables, alcoves. Everything connected seamlessly. I could mimic the style with my innate power, but to create something like this without any supernatural help would have been so difficult. Moreover, the entire hut, its crumbling furniture, floor-to-roof height, even the width of the entrance itself, seemed to be made for creatures much larger and taller than us. And we, as awakened, were already at nearly peak human heights even as teens. There were many more things to admire. If I hadn't been on the verge of dying from exhaustion, I might have appreciated them all. But instead, I just slumped against the walls and floor like everyone else. Lily dropped her satchel immediately, her hands shaking from fatigue. Ray lay flat on his stomach, groaning incoherently. If this is heaven, it's severely underfunded. Vince simply collapsed on his side, muttering prayers to deities he probably didn't believe in. Juliana slid down next to me, clutching her injured leg. The makeshift bandage around her thigh was soaked through with red. If we survive this, she muttered, her voice raspy, you're buying me a new leg. I'll buy you two if you promise to keep what you heard during our boys' talk to yourself, I replied. Quote. Tempting, she murmured like she was holding confidential secrets. In a way, she was, since chaos would ensue if others knew what we were discussing. But what you're asking for is worth much more. Damn, she drives a hard bargain, I whispered to myself. What a master negotiator. Or maybe my negotiation skills were terrible. Meanwhile, Michael stood near a window, peering outside with that annoyingly serene expression that always made me want to throw a chair at him. As the mist crept closer to the edge of the village, I immediately used my innate power to seal every crack and window with mud and stone. All right, I exhaled, standing up and dusting my hands. We should be safe for now. Let's just not make any loud noises. Because I was pretty sure the mist monster could bulldoze through if it wanted to. After all, we had tried going underground once while running from it, but that didn't do any good. The damned beast just cracked the earth wide open and flooded its mist into the underground tunnel, forcing us back into the open once again. So there really was no way to escape that thing. We could only hope to hide until it perhaps lost interest, or found us, and we'd have to run again. Michael took a deep breath and turned to us with that same maddening calm and saintly look of his. I don't think it's after us to eat us, he said. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. So what would you call a 36-hour game of tag with death, then? Michael didn't blink. I think it's just lost. Every eye in the room collectively turned to him. Juliana rubbed her temples. Lost. Michael, it's been following us like a bloodhound since yesterday. I assure you, it knows exactly where it's going. No, he said, kneeling. Listen, I just remember a story my mother used to read to me. A traveler once met a lost spirit beast, a beast of fog and sorrow. Instead of fleeing, he helped it find the home it had lost, and in return, it spared his life. Ray, still lying flat on the floor, cried out, "Can we please not psychoanalyze the killer Fogg based on children's storybooks?" Michael ignored him, which was now likely his favorite hobby after heroics and unsolicited sermons. "My point is, we have tried fighting it, we have tried running from it. Now let's try talking with it. Just like in that story." I was unamused. "Lily, your boyfriend has lost what little mind he had before. Bandage his head next." Juliana shared my lack of enthusiasm. "Does your story end with everyone dying horribly?" Michael gave her a look of patient pity. "No, it ends with mercy," she snorted. "Then it's fiction." Michael's smile was straining, as if he were the sane one here. "Compassion rarely fails, you know." Juliana tilted her head. "Neither does stabbing." "Okay, enough," Alexia interrupted with a sigh, sounding irritated probably because she didn't get her beauty sleep. His idiotic suggestion aside, Mikey might be right about one thing. The beast's aura doesn't feel as malicious as it feels, almost sad. It has also shown a lot of patience in hunting us until now. Most spirit beasts just charge in, but this one is using rudimentary tactics. My point is, it's displaying abnormal behavior. We should be careful. I think it's just studying which one of us will die first, Vince wheezed. "And my money's on me." "Stop betting on yourself," I said flatly. "You're making it sadder." Vince coughed. Too late. Chapter 283. We don't use cadets as meat shields. About 30 minutes had passed. We remained hidden in the mud hut, which I had sealed off completely. To say that everyone was bone-tired would be an understatement. Michael used his X-ray vision to determine that the fog had engulfed the entire ancient village outside, meaning the mist monster was very close. As a result, we decided to stay quiet and not make a sound. This worked in my favor since I didn't have to listen to Michael's frazzled ramblings, Ray's unfunny attempts at humor, or Vince's self-deprecating whining anymore. 10 more minutes passed. We began to believe we might escape this nightmare alive. Maybe we had tricked the mist monster. Maybe we had lost it. Perhaps we could wait it out and then hopefully run away with our lives. ... But as is often the case, expectations only prolong disappointments. And fate, like a bad joke, decided to remind us of that fact. Because as soon as we started to relax a bit, tock, a series of sharp knocks snapped our attention. It came from the wall that sealed off the entrance. Tock. The sound was hard but dull, like someone bashing their knuckles against concrete. We all froze. "Damn it, it found us," Vince whispered. No, let's be optimistic," Kong said, holding up a hand and shaking his head. "It could just be the wind." Tock. This time, the noise came from the wall behind us. Tock. Then another knock. Ray's camera, because of course, he still had it, tilted shakily toward the noise. Chat, we're witnessing the world's worst home rental experience. Please like and subscribe if we make it out alive. "Put that thing away," Juliana hissed. Then, bang, the front wall sealing off the entrance ruptured, chunks of dirt and stone splintering inward as a wave of white mist poured through the newly created opening. "Fuck," I cursed, activating my origin card. And immediately, everything spiraled into chaos. Ray dove sideways, firing a mini explosion into the mist as Vince leapt away in what could only be described as a panic-fueled swan dive. Michael, bless his soul, still tried diplomacy. "Wait, please. We don't mean you harm. We can help you if..." Quar. The mist answered him with a screech that made the walls tremble. Realizing the peace talk wasn't going anywhere, Juliana grabbed Alexia by the collar, muttered a quick apology, or maybe it was, nothing personal, and literally threw her at the mist. "What the?" Alexia yelped midair before landing with a heavy thud. Even the mist monster paused its screeching, as if clearly startled, which, to be fair, was a valid reaction to a blind girl being used as a projectile. "Diversion," Juliana said simply, stepping behind a half-collapsed structure without looking guilty at all. "Bad Julie," I scolded while summoning my axe. "We don't use our fellow cadets as meat shields." Michael stopped and gave me a side eye, and if it weren't for the intensity of the situation we were in, he would have surely called out my shameless hypocrisy. But for now, the scorched oath blazed to life in my hand, sliced through the mist, and passed through harmlessly, dealing damage to nothing. The fog recoiled, only to flood back in. Meanwhile, Ray was already on his way to Alexia. I got her. Kong also skidded to a stop beside her and started helping her up. "Don't worry, young mistress. I'm here." That entire scene consisted of two boys pulling a blind girl's arms in opposite directions. Hanging in the middle, Alexia gritted her teeth. Yeah, well, could you both maybe stop playing tug of war with me? Focus, I shouted at them, slamming my hand against the nearest wall and creating a circular hole in it. Out, everyone. No one needed to be told twice. They all bolted through the gap as another chilling screech rolled somewhere inside the fog. But outside wasn't any better. The once empty ancient village had turned into a swirling ocean of mist. The air churned like a living storm, with shapes moving inside it, making it seem like we could be attacked from anywhere at any time. Lily, Michael yelled, all seriousness now. Give calls. Lily's eyes glowed faintly violet through her sweat-streaked, disheveled bangs. Front, immediately followed by right. 2 seconds delay, then behind. We heeded her warnings. The ground was slick with mud, squelching underfoot. Our seer's foresight, as usual, was extremely helpful. Duck, now, she called out. We all dropped as a sharp blade of fog scythed overhead, cleaving through the huts behind us like paper. Ray threw out a small explosion to clear the path ahead. The fire didn't hurt the monster, but it gave us visibility for a few precious seconds. Go left, Lily called again, her voice had started to tremble. We turned around a towering tree. Juliana was at the rear, limping badly now. The cloth around her thigh was dark with blood. Her face was much paler than usual, and her breath was shallow. Even then, she didn't slow down, until she did. Her injured leg gave way mid-step. She stumbled forward, one knee sinking deep into the mud with a wet squelch. Her hands hit the ground as she tried to push herself up, but her leg refused to move fast enough. Julie, I noticed her immediately and spun around. For a second, one single, brutal second, panic broke through my chest. There she was on the ground, just a sitting duck. I thought about rushing over to her, however, that would mean leaving the front lines wide open. Thankfully, before I could even take a step, Lily grabbed Juliana's arm and hauled her up with a grunt. Come on, don't stop now. Alexia snapped her lasso like a whip. The little sonic boom it produced rippled through the air, dispersing the nearest tendrils of fog and keeping it at bay, if only for a moment. Ray threw himself to their flank and quickly detonated another short-range blast, clearing their immediate surroundings. Go, go, go. I'm not dying for character development. Juliana blinked, and just for a short second, amidst all the shouting, chaos, and the roaring of the mist monster, I saw her looking visibly surprised. Surprised that they hadn't left her behind. Surprised that anyone had reached for her at all. Then her expression hardened again. Her cold, impassive mask settled back into place like an armor she had learned to wear at all times. She forced her weight off Lily, straightened her leg despite the tremor in it, and pushed forward. Move, she hissed, her voice pained yet steady. We did. We ran past the village square, continuing to dodge unseen attacks based on Lily's instructions as the mist howled all around us, shredding trees and mud huts like an invisible storm of knives. Juliana was half running, half dragging her leg now. Her usual calm was cracking every now and then. But maybe because her full focus wasn't just on herself anymore, she noticed what I didn't, what none of us didn't. Lily's movements had slowed somewhat. The glow in her eyes flickered weakly, fading in and out like a dying flame. She winced and clutched her head every few steps. Apparently, the constant strain of precognition was eating away at her. It happens when you try to see the future and the present at once, without sufficient breaks in between for hours upon hours. Her head had started to ache. Finally, after almost a full day of using her powers in crucial situations, she faltered. Her focus broke, and she couldn't keep her origin card activated for just a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat of vulnerability, Juliana saw the mist coiling to Lily's left, slithering low until it took the shape of something tall, skeletal, and inky black. Something with too many eyes and too many mouths, all stretched into distorted grins. Something that had claws as sharp as blades and as long as a fully grown man. The mist monster. It was going for Lily. Juliana acted before her mind could fully process the situation. She twirled on her heel, drew a kunai from somewhere in her outfit, and threw it at the monster in a single fluid motion with surgical precision. The blade whistled in the air and turned into a silver streak that cut through the fog as the time around it accelerated. She knew it wouldn't work. Of course she did. None of our previous attacks had worked. The creature could turn itself incorporeal at will, and it was always too fast to react to our moves, making it a truly untouchable threat. But even a useless strike could buy a second of time. And right now, that would mean everything. Except, hiss. The kunai hit. It hit. The blade sank into the creature's intangible torso, and the air filled with the sound of a sharp, burning hiss. The mist monster reeled backward and let out a shriek so high-pitched and ringing from its many mouths that I had to cover my ears. The monster clutched at its chest, or whatever passed for one. The spot where the kunai had struck was seething like it was struck with acid. Its body warped and flickered violently, pieces of its form dissolving into vapor. Juliana's eyes widened, as did all of ours. Without thinking, she drew out several more kunai. Seeing that, the creature stepped back in what could only be described as incomprehensible fear and wailed so loud it could have shattered glass. Its body convulsed and twisted before turning into mist and dissipating like smoke in the wind. The rest of the fog followed and started retreating fast, like a tidal wave ebbing away from the shore. The air quickly cleared. The trees came back into view, as did the bleeding moon and the shattered sky above. And then, just like that, everything turned quiet. So quiet. Sure, there was the chirping of excessively large insects in the distance and the rustling of giant leaves around us. But we were quiet, save for the sound of our hoarse breathing and the thumping of our hearts in our chests. Finally, after I don't know how many hours, we all crumpled to the ground in exhaustion. And we lay there for a long while. Chapter 284, Monty Hall Death Game. It wasn't until much later that we figured out what had actually happened. You see, all of Juliana's daggers were coated in the venom of the giant two-headed serpent we hunted on the day we set up camp after escaping the temple of the First Rebellion. As soon as we killed that serpent, the mist began to grow dense, slowly swallowing the entire region. After laying out those facts, it was easy to deduce that the two-headed serpent and the mist monster were probably natural enemies. They were two apex predators locked in a war for dominance, each keeping the other in check. For whatever reason, the serpent's poison had evolved to corrode the intangible. This meant the serpent was the only beast that could truly wound the mist monster, preventing it from expanding its hunting ground, even though it was the weaker one. On the other hand, the mist monster was a rank above the twin-headed serpent, so it could still put up a fight despite having its advantage rendered useless. It could stop the serpent from going on a ravenous hunt and ascending a rank to level the playing field. They were countering each other. But then we sauntered in and killed the serpent. We killed the only thing holding the mist back. We shattered the balance. After that, the mist grew thicker with each passing moment, its reach spreading farther and farther until it swallowed the entire region. The mist monster had expanded its hunting ground. Of course, we didn't realize all of this back then because we were too busy resting and surviving to think like ecologists. In hindsight, we were being foolish. Because we had been taught all this at the academy, we had been taught how to hunt and traverse the spirit realm. We had been taught the basics of what to do if we were ever stranded there, and at the top of that long list was to never stay in one spot for too long after slaying a predatory creature. Because there's always another predator in waiting. Okay, well, I wasn't taught all that since I never attended our survival instructor Celine's classes. But hey, the rest of my companions did. So whatever hell we had to go through for the last 3 to 4 days was on those idiots, not me. Also, I made a half-hearted resolution to at least attend Celine's classes from now on. We'll see if I actually keep that resolution, though. Spoilers, I didn't. We stayed in that ruined village for the rest of the day and through the night. No one suggested moving. No one had the strength to. By morning, the exhaustion was so thick it felt physical, like a damp cloak none of us could shake off. Ray was half asleep, leaning on a tree stump. Kong looked like he'd been exorcised. Michael was gone somewhere, probably gathering food again because apparently, near-death experiences hadn't taught him to rest. Juliana sat with her back against the cracked wall of a hut, quietly sharpening one of her knives. Her leg was still a bit stiff but improving. Lily had passed out mid-prayer, drooling against Alexia's shoulder. Yeah, one important thing I forgot to mention about Lily is that she was very religious and prayed, like, 3 times a day. She was a devout follower of the First Light's Creed, one of the 3 main religions aside from the Church of Mercy. And that's one more reason it wouldn't have worked out between us, because she wouldn't have believed I was indeed a god and had worshipped some false deity in the sky instead of me. A little idolizing is the least I ask of my future wife, after all. Anyway, Alexia herself was exasperatedly muttering something about needing actual shampoo in this godforsaken jungle. Highborn girls and their priorities, I rolled my eyes. Overall, it was a peaceful, miserable morning that wasn't a morning at all, because no sun ever replaced that bleeding moon in the shattered sky. After a while, I sent Kong and Ray to scout the area and decide our next route because Michael was taking his sweet time hunting something for dinner and coming back. I sent Ray. Kong didn't listen to me, so I had to go to his mistress. Regardless, when the duo finally returned, they came stumbling out of the overgrown underbrush with expressions somewhere between irritation and relief. Ray flopped onto the ground, chest heaving. Okay. Good news, bad news. Start with the bad, I said, because good news rarely survives in our group. We spotted at least 3 caves in the distance, Kong began, talking to Alexia as she came to stand beside me instead of addressing me directly. Which means potential shelter far away from here. But, Ray lifted a finger, but one of them is filled, and I mean filled, with enormous bees. I blinked. Quote. Bees, Alexia echoed. Yep, giant, furry, winged demons. Ray nodded and stepped suspiciously closer to Alexia's side, much to Kang's visible annoyance. What skin product do you use, by the way, Lady Alexia? I hope I'm not being too forward, but even here, your glow hasn't dimmed a bit. I rolled my eyes and cut his pathetic attempts at flirting short. And the good news? Ray turned to give me the kind of tired look that one man often gives another for ruining his obvious chance with a woman way out of his league. Then he shrugged. The other 2 caves are empty. That's when an idea, terrible and questionable, yet far too wonderful to ignore, formed in my head. The thing is, after the whole nightmare trap incident and then being chased by a murderous fog monster for over a day, everyone's morale was somewhere between, barely alive, and, please let me die. So, I single-handedly decided to lift their spirits. Of course, I roped Alexia in first. Then, the 2 of us forbid Ray and Kong from telling anyone else a thing. When Michael finally returned, dragging the corpse of some giant scorpion-like beast on his back like the noble idiot he was, I gestured grandly toward the others and rounded them up. Michael, our residential hero. I announced. We're going to play a little game to brighten everyone's mood. He looked wary immediately. What kind of game? The Monty Hall death game. I declared. Vince groaned. He was the first and only one to realize what the hell I was talking about. Oh no, no. Look, I'm all for gambling, but only when my life isn't at stake. Seconded, Michael nodded, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'm not playing any death game. Come now, Michael, don't listen to Vince. It's not a gamble, just a simple probability game, I said, smiling like the devil offering a coin flip to a saint. That's exactly what gambling is. He protested. Just hear me out. If you don't like it, I won't pressure you, I lied with a smile. So there are 3 caves. 1 filled with bees, 2 empty. You choose one. If you choose correctly, we will rest safely. If you choose wrong, bees, Ray whispered dramatically, his camera already zooming in on me. Michael folded his arms. Yeah, absolutely not. Come on, Mikey, don't be such a buzzkill, Alexia said, slapping his back. Pun intended. Not you too, Alex. He scowled. I'm not playing. He then walked away to gut the monster he'd brought back. But of course, I wasn't giving up that easily. So I started pressuring him with Alexia on my side, who was all giggles and cheers in my support. Ray joined in as well, partly because of Alexia, but mostly because he was surely going to get some exciting content from this. In the end, poor Michael had no choice but to bow down to our majority of 3 versus his and Vince's voices of reason. He put the meat aside and sighed like a man about to regret every life choice that led him here. Fine, gods damn it, fine, if no one else wants to be sane, why am I even trying? We packed up and set off toward the caves after a quick meal, or what passed for one. Burnt scorpion meat, crunchy on the outside, regret on the inside. The jungle was much quieter now. There was no mist, loud screeches, or eldritch horrors. Just the faint hum of harmless insects too frightened to get closer to 2 bee rankers, and the wet squelch of our boots through the sludge of mud and decomposing leaves. Following a 30-minute walk, we arrived at an intersection of 3 dense trails, each passing by or leading to a dark, mossy cavernous cavity in either a tree or on the ground. Behold your options, brave hero, I said with a flourish. Cave number 1, cave number 2, and cave number 3. 1 holds certain doom, 2 hold relative safety. Michael looked like he wanted to throw me off a cliff. I wouldn't have blamed him at this point. Let's get this over with. All right, brave hero, I grinned. Choose your destiny. He studied the caves like a man facing a moral dilemma. Middle one, he said at last, pointing to cave number 2. Excellent, I said, but before we enter, let me explain the Monty Hall problem. No, he said flatly. Yes, I continued anyway. Statistically speaking, your odds of survival improve if, after I reveal one of the remaining caves to be empty, you switch your choice. I'm sorry, why are we playing a death game with our lives? Lily cried out from somewhere in the back. Because, dear Lily, I said, boredom kills faster than monsters. And also because you didn't object before. I was asleep before, and no one told me anything when I woke up to eat. Tragic, I gave my sincerest mock pity, then conjured a fire arrow. Without another word, I hurled the flaming projectile into cave number 1. The arrow lit up its rocky interior for a split second before exploding upon impact. We felt the ground tremble from where we were standing, but nothing came out of the now smoking cave. Nothing happened. See, it was empty, I said. But now that I've half destroyed it, it's useless. So, will you stick to your choice, or switch? Let me remind you again, switching is strategically the better choice. Michael gave me the deadest look imaginable. You just want me to get stung, don't you? Of course not, I said, grinning a little too hard. I'm just saying, mathematically speaking. Fine, he threw his hands up. I'll switch. Happy, ecstatic, I clapped. We walked for another few minutes to reach cave number 3. By now, Michael seemed convinced he'd picked the safe option. Because sure, in his eyes, I was insane and totally, unreasonably unpredictable. But even I wouldn't let us walk into a swarm of angry monster bees, right? Of course I wouldn't. Or would I? Even Michael had that question written all over his distressed face when the buzzing started. A low, droning bzzzzzzzzzzzzz that grew louder and louder until the air itself began to vibrate. Ah, fuck, Juliana muttered beside me. Ray slowly panned his camera. And here comes the twist. Monstrous bees, each at least the size of a grown man's head, surged from the cave in overwhelming waves like a hurricane of wings and stingers. Run, Michael roared, and we did. Everything went to hell behind us, branches snapped, mud splashed, and to my right, Kong screamed something about allergic reactions. Why did you switch? Juliana shouted mid-sprint. Because he said it was statistically smart. Michael yelled back. Why would you listen to him? I don't know. We didn't stop running until we got to cave number 2 and dove inside it as the angry swarm thundered after us outside. Then, Michael did something that scarred Lily for life. He drew a card and spat a sticky web-like substance straight from his mouth, sealing the cave's entrance shut. Lily froze, then she turned so red I thought the nerves on her forehead might explode. You still didn't throw away that fucking card. Michael, panting, wiped his mouth. Yes, because I said it might come in handy like it just did. And I was having a blast. I patted Lily's shoulder as I walked by, wheezing between laughs. My sympathies. Chapter 285. How to befriend a Juliana. Step 1. Make a game out of it. That night, we sat deep inside the sealed cave, gathered around a campfire so small it might as well have been non-existent. No one spoke for a while, but the silence was still comfortable. I had never experienced a silence like that before, where the quiet didn't feel like an absence but a presence. The faint crackle of the fire, the occasional drip of water from the moss-covered ceiling, and the slow rhythm of our breaths, all of it was calming. Juliana, like a moody cat, sat a bit farther away from all of us. Why does she always sit alone? Vince whispered with a frown. I glanced at her and then shifted my gaze to the other side of the cave, where Kong was lying with his hands under his head. I pointed at him. My question is, why is he always away from us? Michael chuckled. He likes to brood, pretending to be dark and mysterious. But he's a big softy at heart. Right, Alexia, Kong, Michael, and Lily, the 4 of them had undergone so many missions together that by now they knew each other much more intimately than any other team in the academy. They were close friends by definition. But he's not a pretty girl, so who cares? Ray laughed before quickly covering his mouth, as if he'd said something wrong. Then, he literally batted his lashes at the blind girl who couldn't see him. But you, Lady Alexia, are the prettiest, if I'm not being too forward. What the heck? What happened to this guy? Why was he flirting like a middle-aged shut-in virgin? Where did all his charm and charisma go? Alexia, with Lily combing her hair, blinked a couple of times like she was unsure of what to even say. Thanks. I nearly died from secondhand embarrassment. And so did Vince, Michael, and Lily. Kong merely opened one eye and started glaring at Ray. Nevertheless, I was thankful to Ray. After all, Kong now had to split his hate between him and me. I decided to change the subject before clearing my throat. Ahem. Anyway, Moving on from whatever that was, how about we play another game? Everyone collectively groaned. It's not a death game, don't worry. I immediately reassured them. Okay, you might die, but it's not a death game. Just, what is it? Michael sighed, acting reluctant, but I could see the curiosity in his eyes. It's simple. You'll have to see how far you can push your luck with Juliana. The more difficult the challenge, the more points you'll gain, I explained with a devious little smirk. For example, convince her to sit with us, that's 6 points. Braid her hair, 12 points. Make her laugh, 50 points. But I'll be the judge of how to allocate points. No way, Michael quickly waved his hand and lounged back, giving up immediately. Yeah, bro, too risky, Ray shook his head as well. I'd rather take my chances with those monstrous bees again. I rolled my eyes with a chuckle. Yeah, well, I expected as much. No sane person would ever willingly approach Juliana after seeing even a shade of her true colors. Still, these people were quite literally the main characters of this world. I expected at least some valor from them. So I was a little disappointed. Until I heard Vince's voice. What's the reward? I looked at him the way you would look at a madman to admire his insanity, equal parts shocked and surprised. He held my gaze. What, surely you, a Theosbane, have something to offer after practically suggesting suicide for a game. I burst out laughing. Of course. How about this, I'll award 1 essence stone for scoring 2 points. Vince kept looking at me for a second longer, and I felt like he was going to try to negotiate the price to be a bit higher. But instead, he just nodded and said, deal. I couldn't believe my ears, much like everyone else around us. Bro, seriously, Ray exclaimed, his jaw hanging open in surprise. Alexia shook her head with a titter. You are a moron. The good thing is, you'll die a moron. Hey, don't write him off yet. I believe in you, Vince. Michael said, before he summoned a sword and started digging a grave beside him with its pommel. You're all assholes, Vince scoffed before getting up. Then he walked over to Juliana, and they actually started talking. Well, he was the one talking. She was just listening with narrowed eyes. Just as we were about to start Vince's funeral preparations, he took off his gloves, and offered them to Juliana. We all gasped. This was a very risky move. Yes, it was getting really chilly these days in the Noctvale wilds, but directly offering Juliana your gloves like that, it could either blow up in your face or pay off greatly. And it did pay off. After a long, almost too long, pause, Juliana accepted the gloves with a carefree roll of her shoulders. We all lost our minds, but had to pretend like we weren't witnessing history being made to avoid ruining Vince's game plan. And thank heavens we didn't, because soon after that, I witnessed something that made me want to believe in miracles. You see, over the years, I had seen Vince accomplish the impossible many times. I had once seen him decapitate himself, then stitch his own head back together before he killed a girl with a kiss. I had also seen him defeat a Scryant, the hoarder of lost knowledge, with nothing but words. And believe it or not, I have even seen him outwit a real angel in a game of cards by doing nothing. Nothing. Yet, out of all his miraculous and spectacular and downright absurd feats, nothing he ever did was as impressive as what he accomplished that night. Because somehow, by some dark sorcery, he convinced Juliana to sit with us. Juliana, to sit with us. I don't even know what he said since neither of them ever told us. One moment he was talking, and the next, she stood up, walked over, and sat with us beside me as I scooted over in a daze. Every single one of us froze. Michael stopped pretending to dig the grave. Ray's mouth hung open like a man witnessing a divine revelation. Alexia and Lily both blinked so slowly you could have mistaken them for robots. Even Kong was quietly watching from his corner, one eyebrow raised. It took us some time to recover. But slowly, incredulously, we began to talk again about all kinds of different and useless topics as I discreetly handed Vince 3 essence stones. Our conversation continued for a while until Lily, who had finished braiding Alexia's hair by the firelight, turned to Juliana. You have beautiful strands, she said softly. Want me to do yours too? Damn, I never knew Lily, that pure, demure, saintly Lily, was the daredevil type. Juliana's gaze slid toward her, cold and warning. Touch my hair, and I'll take a finger off your hand. Lily smiled sweetly. So, just one braid, then. A long pause ensued. Juliana looked away. She didn't agree, but she didn't disagree either. So Lily shifted a little closer, as if casually testing the waters of death itself. We all collectively held our breath. Then, to everyone's shock, Juliana didn't move. She just sat there, her chin slightly raised, her usual stoic expression unchanged as Lily carefully began separating her white strands with a comb. Ray leaned in toward me and whispered, "She's letting her do it." I nodded slowly, not taking my eyes off the two girls. "I think so. Or she's waiting for Lily to finish before killing her. 50-50 chance, really." Michael scratched his cheek and spoke in a hushed tone. Nah, if she wanted to kill her, she would have done it already." "Yeah, that's what she wants you to think," I whispered back, as if we were commenting on some nature documentary. Meanwhile, Lily was humming a soft tune that would normally lull you into peace, but every note just made the tension worse right now. She worked delicately and with fine precision. After a few minutes, she wove a thin braid off Juliana's snowy white hair and leaned back with a satisfied smile. "There, done." Still, no one dared to breathe. Juliana took out one of her kunai and looked at her reflection on the polished blade. Finally, she glanced at Lily with something dangerously close to mild approval. "Not bad," Juliana murmured. The entire cave erupted in disbelief. "Holy," she complimented someone. Vince yelped. Alexia gasped. She did. She didn't even compliment me when I saved her, but now she did." Michael joined his hands together and gazed up, as if acknowledging the existence of the heavens. Even Kong sat up, muttering under his breath. Guess the world is about to end after all." Meanwhile, Juliana looked around at all of us with a bored expression that practically said, "Idiots." Lily simply smiled, calmly basking in the chaos she had created as I sneaked her 6 well-deserved essence stones. Chapter 286. Safe route home. The next 2 days were relatively uneventful. All we did was walk, kill any spirit beast that attacked us, run from those we couldn't kill, and witness a few too many horrors that would probably scar us for the rest of our lives, the kind of horrors that'd require heavy therapy to move on from. Uneventful, like I said. Then there were a few minor incidents, like the time we encountered a tree that screamed when Ray tried to sit on it. We don't talk about that anymore. There was also a river of lilac water that reflected everyone's face except mine. Juliana said it was probably cursed. Alexia said maybe it just had good taste. I almost declared war on her for defaming my handsome face. We moved on. At one point, Kong swore he saw a floating figure in the clouds. None of us did, but Kong wasn't the type to lie, which somehow made it worse. Michael suggested we pretend he hadn't said anything before the sky got any ideas. And then, on the evening of the second day, we set up camp. Kong and Michael went to scout the area, gather firewood, and hopefully find a clean source of water since our supply was running dangerously low. Meanwhile, I was brainstorming our next course of action. We'd been heading west ever since we started our journey home. Because in the west, across the Lake of Grief, lay my father's golden sanctuary. Once we reached it, we'd be safe. But that was the challenge, wasn't it? To get there. It had been around 15 or 16 days since we'd been dropped into this godforsaken region. In that time, we'd managed to cross about 20% of the jungle. Which, honestly, wasn't a small feat. As awakened, our speed on foot was far beyond that of any normal human. But from this point onward, the journey would only grow harsher and deadlier as we ventured deeper into the forest. We wouldn't be getting much rest, and the abominations we'd face from here on out would make everything so far look like warm-up fights. I sighed, shamelessly lounging on a flat rock while the others ignited a small campfire and started dinner preparations, without me lifting a finger. If only I knew safer routes, I muttered, scratching my chin. Damn, I miss the game's map. In my previous life, I'd spent countless hours exploring every death zone, including Noctvale Wilds, to unlock almost the entire game map. If only I had that now, I could have easily plotted a safe path through this cursed forest to the Lake of Grief. Gods, why didn't I get a system or any kind of cheat, I mean, my life was practically identical to those, reincarnated into A-game story protagonists. So why wasn't I blessed like them? Hey, Sam, instead of moping about whatever it is you're moping about, how about you come help us for a change? Vince called out. I tilted my head toward him, eyes half-lidded. Help you with what? Moral support, because that's all I can offer right now. Vince scowled, stirring the pot of whatever ungodly stew he was making. Or you use that flashy power of yours to heat up the fire and be useful, Sorry to disappoint you, buddy, but I can't control plasma yet. I can make lava, maybe, though it'll drain a lot of essence. Should I do that? I asked innocently. Vince's scowl deepened. I chuckled. Besides, I am being useful. I'm supervising. Juliana, sitting nearby and cleaning all three of her swords, spoke without looking up. Supervising what? The rock you're sitting on? Yes, I replied flatly. It's a very well-behaved rock. Ray snorted. Sam will make any excuse to avoid work. Yeah, so apparently they'd all decided to start calling me by my nickname. I thought about objecting but then remembered how annoyingly persistent they were, so I gave up without trying. Careful, I said lazily. Slandering a highborn is a punishable offense for commoners, you know. Alexia let out a quiet laugh from across the fire. Then I'll say it, you're a certified slacker. I rolled my eyes dramatically. Nobility against nobility. Our forefathers feared such a day would come. They ignored me, which was fair. I was ignoring myself too, in spirit. After a while, the scent of burning herbs and technically edible meat was all that filled the air. The food being cooked was fine. Vince was many things, sharp, smart, quick-witted, but a chef, he was not. Not that it was entirely his fault. We were running low on firewood, and Michael and Kong still hadn't returned from their little expedition to find more. They'd been gone for a while. A little too long, actually. I sat upright. Thankfully, just as I was considering going to look for them myself, Kong stepped through the underbrush. But the only problem was, he came back alone. We all froze. Hey, where's Mike? Ray voiced the question on everyone's mind. Kong frowned at him. What do you mean, where? He said, turning around. He's right behind me. He stopped. Because, like I said, there was no one behind him. What the fuck? Kong blinked. He was right there just now. We all stood up. Alexia immediately summoned her origin card to sense Michael's aura nearby. But before she could, guys, a familiar voice called out. We all turned toward the source to see Michael stumble out of the underbrush, panting, scratched, and carrying an armful of firewood. Everyone exhaled in relief. Thank the heavens, Vince muttered. Do you have any idea how much this idiot freaked us? Guys. And that's when another Michael stepped out of the same underbrush, carrying another set of firewood. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Ray screamed, Nope, I'm out. This is how horror movies start. Both Michaels looked at each other, then at us, equally horrified. What the fuck is this? They said in perfect unison. Oh, this is bad, I muttered, rubbing my temple. Wait, maybe one of them's a clone. Lily said, half stepping back and summoning her origin card. Or an illusion. Or maybe they're both demons wearing Michael's skin, Juliana suggested calmly. Let's just stab both and be done with it. What? The Michaels shouted together. Juliana's expression didn't change. It's the simplest solution. Lily looked at her with a mix of concern and alarm. How about we don't start with murder? Fine, Juliana said, picking up her wakizashi and drawing the blade halfway out. Then you choose who dies first. Michael, number 1, 2, who knew, looked horrified. You can't possibly think I'm fake. The other Michael jabbed a finger at him. He's the fake. Look at his eyes. Vince squinted. They're both black. Exactly, the first Michael snapped. Wait, I think Julia's right. Both of their eyes are black, but the real Michael had brown eyes, Vince said flatly. Excuse me, what? I frowned. Yeah, Vince nodded with confidence. The real Michael had brown eyes. You're an idiot, I said simply. He's always had black eyes. Nah, Now, in addition to both Michaels shouting over each other and swearing they were real, Vince and I were locked in a heated argument over the guy's eye color. At the same time, one Michael started listing past missions to prove his authenticity. The other then began quoting famous movie dialogues as if they were somehow relevant. Eventually, one of them summoned a longsword from his soul arsenal, and the other took up a fighting stance. Ray ducked behind Alexia. This is so stupidly terrifying I can't even process it. Same, Alexia muttered. Juliana sighed. Can I stab them both now? Not yet, I said, stepping forward. Let me handle this. Everyone turned to me as I approached the two Michaels. Both were tense, but I could already see the subtle differences. One kept glancing nervously at Juliana's sword, while the other's grip tightened on his own. All right, I said casually, crossing my arms. Whichever one of you is real, answer me this, what's the safest route to the Lake of Grief from here? They both paused on the spot. It was a simple question. And if I was right about what was happening, only the fake Michael would have an answer. The one on the left looked confused. What? How the hell would I know that, Sam? But the one on the right lit up immediately. The Valley of the God Who Eats is, he said smoothly. That's the safest route out of here. The other creatures don't roam near it. The god's asleep right now, so it's safe. But to reach it, we'll have to cross the caldera where the demon is sealed. It'll be a challenge, but it's our best bet. The air went still. Vince frowned. The god who, what? Juliana's gaze flicked toward me. Quote. Young master. My face must have drained of color because she slowly reached for her sword again. The real Michael, the one standing beside Kong, looked utterly lost. What the hell are they talking about? The Valley of the God Who Eats is, I repeated quietly. You mean the Valley of the Forgotten? That's not a route, that's a graveyard. Ray turned to me slowly, looking just as bewildered as the rest. A graveyard for fools who don't want to exist anymore, I said dryly. And the caldera he mentioned, that's where Vagar the Moon Eater is sealed. We wouldn't last 5 minutes there. The fake Michael stared at me, his smile stretched just a little too wide, like his face didn't quite understand how to be human yet. Well, you asked, so I just told you. It's our best chance, because the other paths are blocked, by the skeleton and the worm. His voice cracked into a shrill laugh. Now kill it, kill the fake me, kill it. His head tilted too far to the side in a motion that was jerky and unnatural, like his neck wasn't used to holding weight. Juliana's sword was already out. Kill it, I said. She didn't hesitate. With one clean swing, the thing's head came off, and burst into a rain of writhing black worms that splattered across the campfire. The rest of its body convulsed, then collapsed into a pile of squirming rot. Michael screamed. Ray screamed louder. Vince threw the burning pot at it. Juliana calmly flicked her blade clean. Messy. Michael was still hyperventilating when Lily rushed to his side. It looked just like me. How did it? Why me? I pinched the bridge of my nose. They're called clone worms, a hive mind spirit beast. They are not very strong, but they can shapeshift well. One of them latches onto you and learns everything, your memories, your voice, even your mannerisms. Then several of them merge together to take your shape. Unfortunately, they can copy humans, but not their soul arsenal. They also confuse their own memories for yours, so you can trick them into revealing things only they would know. For example, a safe route, since they are everywhere in this forest, they know all that is to know about it. Which, thankfully, worked in our favor. Maybe the main character's plot armor really was kicking in. Or maybe it was just a coincidence we came across this abomination. Either way, Michael finally began to calm down. Lily hesitated. So, what's this valley it mentioned? Don't worry about it, I waved her off. What we should worry about is the caldera, because that's where the demonic spirit beast I told you all about is sealed. Everyone either gasped, blinked, froze, or stared at me with varying degrees of disbelief. Alexia was the first to find her voice. Sealed? By who? I gave her a look. Who else? The monarchs. My father, your grandfather, and a few other dukes. Chapter 287, Vagar the Devourer. I once mentioned that the Noctvale Wilds was a region perfectly suited to be a prison, thanks to its strange and merciless geography, with the tall peaks of the Crown of Thorns walling this place off from one side, and the savage depths of the Lake of Grief swallowing any escapees from the other. But even then, if, by some miracle, you ever managed to flee this hellhole alive, then you'd either land in the territory of the Night's Witch Selene Valkyrin or the Dawn Scourge Arthur Theosbane, making them the two wardens of this prison. And this wasn't by coincidence. The locations of Selene's and my father's sanctuaries were deliberate. They were strategically built around this region to keep it sealed. To keep whatever lurked inside from ever walking free. So then, what exactly was trapped in here? The answer was, of course, a demonic spirit beast, one of the Spirit King's princes, known as Vagar the Moon Eater. And who was Vagar? Glad you asked. Let me tell you his story. You see, Vagar was born in a distant world. He was blessed, or cursed, with the power to read the stars. Basically, he could predict the future with uncanny precision. He could also see the strings of fate themselves, a talent once believed to belong only to the gods. From an early age, he was not just brilliant, but startlingly perceptive as well. But for all his intellect, he was still only a child when he foresaw the end of his world. He saw the oceans evaporate, the forests wilt into ash, and his people slaughtered until nothing remained, not even the moon in their sky. He saw his kingdom collapse. He saw himself standing alone in the ruins of his fallen home. There was no one else left. Everyone but him had died. Everyone but him had met an end so gruesome it shook him to his very core. Terrified, he tried to change that future. He warned his people, he pleaded with the king, begged the elders, even prayed to the gods. But no one listened. Some called him delusional, others called him dangerous, and the very few who did believe him feared the doom he spoke of more than they trusted the boy delivering the warning. So Vhagar chose to act alone. He studied the stars with greater fervor and learned to unravel the threads of fate that bound his world together. In simple terms, he taught himself to influence causality. He learned to bend fate itself. Just slightly, at first. He created tiny miracles, like redirecting a storm, averting a famine, or saving a life that should have died. And it worked. For a time, he thought he could challenge destiny. Little by little, he clawed his way up in society and eventually earned the crown of his kingdom. He married the princess and became the king. Everything was going well for a while. But then soon, he realized something dreadful. No matter what he did, the end didn't change. Sure, he could change the little things. But what was supposed to happen would always find a way of happening. Fate would always run its course. Destiny would always find a way to sneak up in the end. The storms he redirected would come back eventually. The famines he averted would strike elsewhere. And the lives he saved would always die in other ways, rendering his efforts useless in the grand scheme of things. Moreover, he started having more visions that showed the end of his world. Every new vision showed the same fire, the same silence, and the same ruins. And every time, he told himself that if he changed just one more thing, perhaps this time would be different. But it never was. Slowly, he grew desperate. And a desperate king is never a good thing. He began making reckless choices, bold, desperate, and damning decisions. He started abusing his power in pursuit of a future that refused to shift. But every attempt to save the world only pushed it closer to the end he couldn't change. If he tried to stop a calamity, a worse crisis followed. If he tried to cease a war, a rebellion ignited. If he rescued one person, someone more important would be lost. It was as if the world itself was mocking him, twisting his good intentions into cruel inevitabilities. Still, he couldn't stop. How could he? What other options did he even have? So, he didn't stop. Not until his own people began to fear him. The very people who once relied on him, who praised him, who swore loyalty to him were now turning against him. They said what Vhagar was doing was wrong. That he was defying the will of the heavens. That by meddling with fate, he was unweaving the order of creation and angering the gods. Temples burned his name from their walls. Scholars called him an omen. His name became synonymous with destruction. Still, he kept trying. Because he had seen the end, over and over again, and he refused to surrender to it. He convinced himself he was doing this for them, for his people, for his world, but the more he tried to save it, the faster it died. Everything was unraveling right before his eyes, and so was he. In the end, it was his own people who rose against him. What followed was a world war. They called it the reclamation of fate. Entire nations unified against him. The sky was filled with the smoke of burning towers and the endless screams of the dying. Vhagar obviously fought back, but not out of hatred. Not even because he wanted to preserve his power. No, he fought back because he refused to accept that everything he had done, everything he had sacrificed, had led him here. He couldn't accept that he had failed. But fate does not care about the feelings of mortals. And so, Vhagar fell, broken, bleeding, surrounded by the remains of the kingdom he had tried to save, and betrayed by the very people he sought to protect, he fell. That was when he appeared. The one who called himself the Emperor of Corruption, a benevolent god who was no god at all. Vhagar didn't know it back then, but this being of unimaginable power was the Spirit King himself. He looked down at Vhagar, and offered him his hand. You wished to save your world, the false god said. Let me give you the power to do so. Let me unbind you from the strings of fate that failed you. Vhagar did not refuse. With his final breath and a trembling hand, he reached out and accepted the false god's offer. And as soon as he did, he was reborn. From the brink of death, Vhagar rose to life once again and went on an unending rampage. He slew anyone who opposed him. He obliterated anything that stood between him and his goal. He killed and killed and killed. He consumed the oceans. He consumed the forests. He consumed the very people who had once begged him for salvation and then betrayed him. He kept consuming everything until there was no one left to fear him. No one left to oppose him. No one left at all. No. There was no one left, at all. By the time Vhagar came to his senses, it was already too late. He found himself standing in the ruins of what was once his home, utterly alone. In the end, he had become the very apocalypse he once feared. He had fulfilled the prophecy he had spent his life trying to prevent. The grief broke him. In his anguish, he lifted his eyes to the moon, the last unbroken thing in his sky. The only thing that had witnessed his fall. And he could not bear to gaze at it any longer. The moon had always been the symbol of hope in his world. Hope that he no longer had left. So, he consumed the moon as well. And thus was born Vhagar the Moon Eater, the 8th prince of the Spirit King's endless court, devourer of fate and dreams alike. Even now, they say that if you speak his name, you can hear him begging the stars to tell him how to undo what he's done, before he devours you as well. But the stars never answer him. Because they, too, are afraid of him. But most of it is obviously fiction, I said, shrugging. We don't exactly have a way to fact-check a demonic creature's backstory. And it's not like anyone else survived from his world to write the Moon Eater's biography. In the cackling light of the campfire, no one spoke. Anyway, I continued, when the Spirit King sent his army to conquer Earth, Vhagar was one of the demon princes who tried to invade. The monarchs, who were much younger back then, fought back. Awen von Zinks, Alexia's grandfather, supported them. So did my father, who was only a young duke at the time. Instructor Celine's mother, Duchess Sophia Zen Valkyrin, was also part of that battle, and she died valiantly. And there was another young man who played a crucial role in the incident, the man you now know as Duke Arminius Kurz-Absberg. Ray's eyes flicked toward me for an unnoticeable moment. But aside from that tiny acknowledgement, no one reacted. So I kept speaking. They fought and killed all the demon princes, all except one, Vhagar the Devourer. Him, they couldn't kill. So they sealed him. My father extracted a bit of will from every monarch, and Sophia Valkyrin forged 5 physical shackles from that combined will. Those shackles were then used to bind Vhagar on top of a caldera here in the Noctvale Wilds. At this point, my companions were staring at me as though I'd just grown a second head. Finally, Alexia blurted out, "What the fuck? My father never told me any of this." "Well, duh," I said matter-of-factly. "You're not even his heiress. He can't just trust you with critical information." "I don't believe it." Lily shook her head, looking more like she was arguing with herself than with me. "It sounds like a bedtime story. It even has that misguided prophecy ending. And why are seers always shown to be so dumb in these kinds of stories?" Vince, sitting beside her, shrugged. "Well, you know how that poem goes." Now all of us were staring at him. He frowned back at us. "What? I'm talking about that poem." "What poem?" Michael asked, voicing everyone's confusion. Vince made a vague gesture. "That poem about seers and prophets, you know." "Dude, we have no idea what you're talking about," I said. His frown deepened into a scowl. Thankfully, before he could rupture a blood vessel, Ray chimed in. "The prophet spoke of fire, and cities turned to ash. The seer saw darkness, and light began to clash. The soothsayer sang of storms, and winds tore through the land. The last oracle stayed silent, with fate held in their hand." "Yes, that." Vince jumped up and jabbed a finger at Ray. It's a famous Southern poem. It means if you see a fate, it's already too late to change it. And if you try to change it, if you even speak it aloud, you'll only hasten its arrival. You'll manifest it." "That's just not true," Lily countered with a shake of her head. "I saw you die, twice while we were running from that fog monster. But because I called it out, you're alive." Vince paled. "Wait, die as in, dead. We are digressing," Ray said, making a surprisingly sensible remark for once. "The point is, Samael's story just can't be real. And who was that spirit lord or whatever? Is he going to appear in some of your other stories as well? Wait, is he your fictional universe's big bad guy?" "Actually," I laughed, yes, he is." Everyone chuckled. Everyone except Michael and Juliana. Michael because he already had a vague idea about the Spirit King. And Juliana because she had overheard my conversation with Rexard, and she knew that everything I had told them was far from a joke. Chapter 288. I don't like to be tied. We kept drifting on and off topic for an entire hour that night, discussing our plan from here on out. Understandably, my allies were more than a little skeptical about everything I had told them. "So this Vhagar," Ray began, but I immediately shushed him. No, Don't say his name out loud, I interjected sharply. Quote. Why? He raised an eyebrow. Because names create connections, Ray. I leaned forward, dramatically stressing his name to put it in focus. And higher entities only need a little connection to influence you. But you just said his name. Vince pointed out, eyes narrowing like he'd just solved a mystery no one asked him to solve. That's because I'm special. Also, I'm already being hunted by one demon, so what's one more? I shrugged with a grin, though it faltered when absolutely no one returned it. Besides, as I said, Vhagar is sealed right now. So he can't do anything. But for future reference, don't just say any name out loud. Ray paused for a second, inhaling slowly. Fine, so this, Moon Eater, you said he's sealed at the top of a caldera. Why do we even have to go there then? Because the deeper we go into the forest, the more dangers we'll face. We can't keep running blindly anymore, or we'll stumble into something even deadlier than that fog monster. We need to plan our route carefully from now on. If we pick wrong, I glanced around at the flickering firelight, then simply surviving will be the least of our problems. I was in no way exaggerating. In the game, Michael and the others nearly died several times before escaping this region. And more than once, they were possessed, brutally mutilated, struck with strange diseases, or all three at once. I can still remember those scenes, not vividly, but enough to make my stomach twist. It was exciting when I was playing the game and watching it all unfold on screen. It was exciting to see Michael cut through horrors like the golden hero he was meant to be. It was exciting because I was safe back then. But the idea of living through those same events did not excite me nearly as much. And speaking of Michael, he frowned slightly. So we're basically heading toward a creature we can't kill, who's sealed in a volcano, where we'll be trapped with him, instead of going away from it. When you say it like that, it sounds dumb, I admitted. But yes, I still don't believe this Moon Eater story is real, Lily groaned. But I believe we're all going to die. Well, if the seer says so. Juliana muttered, utterly deadpan as if the prospect of heading into the maws of a mythically powerful creature wasn't a big deal at all. Instead, she was poking the fire with her blade. Sometimes I had no choice but to admire her dispassion for things. And yes, she was sitting with us again tonight. A miracle, I know. Ray even offered her tea, which she threw away after one sip. Just one sip. That earned him a few pity essence stones from me. Yes, we were still playing the game of testing our luck with Juliana. After Vince's impressive display of bravery by convincing her to sit with us without getting stabbed, and Lily's success at braiding her hair, everyone thought they could be the one to break Juliana's icy exterior, even if a little. Needless to say, everyone failed spectacularly. Vince sighed, bringing my attention back to the topic. Fantastic. Love the optimism you all have. The conversation was supposed to stay serious after that, but of course it didn't. Within minutes, Ray was suggesting increasingly stupid backup plans, Lily started debating spirit beasts mating rituals for some reason, and Vince insisted he once read that demons couldn't touch people who didn't believe in them, which earned him the collective stare of everyone present. Soon, we lost the thread entirely. By that logic, Ray scoffed. If the Moon Eater is real and we face it, I'll just shout, I don't believe in you. And boom, I win. Juliana's lips twitched almost invisibly. Then, to everyone's shock, she gave a quiet, hey. Ray froze mid-breath. Did she just laugh? Did you guys hear that? That was a laugh. I made the psychopath laugh. Alexia applauded sarcastically. Whoa, congratulations, you've achieved what every therapist dreams of. Ray pumped his fist, then turned to me eagerly. How many essence stones does that earn me? Nothing, I gave him a flat look. That wasn't a laugh. Ray gawked. Huh, what do you mean that wasn't a laugh? Considering Juliana, that was a full-blown chortle. I turned to the girl in question. Julie, was that a laugh? Nope, she yawned. And then, naturally, that spiraled into another argument. In the end, everyone agreed to go with my plan. Most of them were still skeptical about the Moon Eater tale I'd told them, so they didn't fully believe we'd have to face a demonic spirit beast wherever we were heading. The others, namely Juliana and Michael, couldn't help but take my words a bit more seriously. Regardless, I would just like to clarify that there was a method to my madness. I wasn't leading us to slaughter. Vhagar would still be sealed right now. So even if we ended up facing him, the fight wouldn't be impossible to win. Well, I hoped there wasn't a fight at all. Ideally, we'd just run past him. But I knew I was hoping for too much. Still, a known danger was infinitely better than an unknown one. I'd rather take my chances against a single sealed, extremely weakened demonic beast than risk running into a group of whatever greater or ancient abominations lurk deeper in this accursed forest. So we moved. We traversed through the hellish jungle until we reached the end of the plateau step we were on, then climbed down. After our descent, we braved the jungle again for many more miles, battling and running from monstrosities so twisted and vile that I still get chills thinking about them. Oh, and along the way, we encountered the clone worms many more times. Whenever any of us stepped out of sight, they'd return with a clone of themselves claiming to be the real one. Michael was attempted to be replaced 7 times, Ray 5, Vince and Lily both thrice, and Juliana and Alexia twice. My clone only showed up once. I killed it before others got the chance to confirm who was the real one. Naturally, paranoia skyrocketed, especially among the 3 idiots called Ray, Vince, and Michael. At one point, all 3 claimed I'd been replaced by a fake. They were convinced the shape-shifting worms had taken my place. When I tried to defend myself, Vince hit me with a counter-argument. You were the only one who knew about the first clone worms that showed up. It's suspicious, because only a beast would know so much about other beasts. Yeah, Vince, you were completely right. My bad for being knowledgeable, apparently. Gods forbid someone in this group had a functioning brain cell. But logic didn't matter to them anymore, not when paranoia had sunk its claws into the idiots. They tried to tie me up. Tie me up. I had to use lethal force to get them off my back. After that, at one point, Ray demanded we do a trust test. And what was this trust test? Oh, what else? A collection of extremely idiotic questions to see if we answered, like our real selves. And I mean extremely idiotic questions. He started normally enough, asking about our birthdays and hobbies. Then he drifted straight into nonsense like, would you still love me if I were a worm? Lily blinked. Why would I answer the question? Ray barked, holding a torch to her face like an interrogator in a third-rate crime drama. She walked away. Unfazed, he turned to Juliana next. Julia, he said with a suggestive smirk, do you think I'm the most good-looking cadet in our batch? Juliana paused, then returned the smirk and whispered coquettishly, sure. And I also think your skin would make good boots. Ray paled and wilted like a salted slug, then shuffled to Alexia. Ahem, okay, Lady Alexia, what's something only the real you would know about me? She tilted her head. Ray, I've known you for less than a month. There is nothing only I would know about you. Ray looked emotionally destroyed, and that went on for a while. Kong refused to answer anything. Michael, bless his kind little heart, tried to cooperate, but ended up with a migraine. Dealing with Ray tends to do that to you. And then, of course, came my turn. Ray stepped up to me with the stupidest smile I had ever seen on a human face. Sam, what's something only the real you would say? I shook my head. You're an idiot. Ha, he pointed triumphantly. Got you. Wait, no, that is what you would say. He paused, but it's also what a clone pretending to be you would say. Before he could spiral deeper, Juliana casually drew her blade, and Ray dropped the topic instantly, too terrified to push her patience further. I had no objections. Honestly, saving me from Ray's nonsensical ramblings was the most supportive thing she had ever done for me. Chapter 289, Character Development. By the time we finally crossed the jungle's inner stretch and climbed down yet another plateau step, everyone was exhausted beyond reason. It had taken us 2 full days of non-stop traveling at our top speed, and I could not stress enough how many monstrosities we had to fight or run away from. By the time we neared the end of the 3rd plateau edge, the mountainous silhouette of the caldera we wanted to reach was becoming visible far in the distance. If my guess was correct, we'd reach there in about 10 days. Yeah, 10 more days of fighting and running and hiking. Gods, I never thought I'd say this, but I was starting to miss my father, and my lavish bedroom in his domain. Mostly the bedroom, but on the bright side, the journey after we reached the caldera was going to be smooth and uneventful, or so I hoped. 3 more days passed, and we were climbing down yet another escarpment, our 3rd one in more than twice as many days. It felt like we were picking up speed, when suddenly we were attacked by a horde of insectoid creatures that resembled hornets with tentacles. Yeah, tentacles. Hornets the size of truck tires, each with multiple spiked tentacles flailing out of their grotesque backs. Why did everything here have tentacles? Why does everything here have tentacles? Ray shouted exactly what I was thinking. For the first, I agreed with him. We were standing on a thin ledge, meaning we had no room to move around and put up a proper fight with those flying. Monstrosities. So the first thing I did was call upon my innate power and extend the rocky ledge beneath us until it was wide enough to be called a platform, granting just enough stability for everyone to move easily, if not comfortably. Then, I heroically stepped back and allowed the others to fight off battle. What? Don't judge me. Look, I had been working very hard the last couple of days. Every time we climbed down these treacherous escarpments, it was my job to secure everyone's footing and ensure no one plummeted to their death. So yes, I had been working my ass off. The least these ungrateful pricks could do for me in return was let me rest for a moment. And, well, they did. You see, given how immaturely these people behaved most of the time, it was very easy to forget that they all were the supposed main characters of this story. Every single one of them was a prodigy in their own right. Ray was the number 2 cadet in our batch and had the highest attack potency out of us all. Vince possessed one of the most versatile support abilities I knew of. Lily was the first true seer born in the West in generations. Michael was by far the greatest swordsman of our age group. Alexia was unrivaled in close quarters combat, and Juliana was a psychopath. Dealing with some oversized tentacle hornets wasn't going to be a problem for them. And it wasn't. The fight lasted 5 minutes at best. Juliana was the first to move. She took a single step forward and immediately disappeared out of view, turning completely invisible for a few seconds before reappearing behind the first wave of advancing flying horrors. Her rapier flashed and skewered several buzzing hornets in one brutal thrust. Before the mindless beasts could even register what was happening, she vanished from sight once again and appeared at the horde's flank. Then she leapt, impaled the nearest hornet midair, vaulted off its abdomen, and landed on the platform with a dancer's grace. And I don't mean this metaphorically. It really looked like she was dancing. When she moved again, she was a blur. Again, I mean this literally. Her movements were literally hazy, like she was glitching and leaving afterimages in reality. I figured she was using some sort of illusion card to obscure her movements. Honestly, I was a little surprised, not because she had added some new cards to her deck, but because she was showing them off so easily. Let me explain. In the game, Juliana always favored an assassin's build, meaning she preferred cards that let her move discreetly, strike cleanly, and escape quickly. She preferred illusion cards, movement cards, teleportation cards. She preferred traps, pre-planning, poisoning, incapacitating, anything that didn't involve a fair fight, just like a proper assassin. And just like any proper assassin, she liked to keep her skills hidden. The less everyone else knew of her capabilities, the less they could counter her when she'd actually decide to come for them. So the fact that she was revealing even a fraction of her soul arsenal when she easily could have done what I was doing, standing back and spectating, letting these fools fight in our stead, was shocking. In my opinion, it meant one of two things. 1. She really hated those giant hornets. Bugs did give her creeps, after all. Especially bugs that could fly. Or 2. She had decided to pull her own weight and not drag the group down for her own self-preservation. So was it psychotic bug phobia or character development? Knowing Juliana, it was probably both. Anyway, she took point and continued charging ahead, displaying her impressive swordsmanship. Behind her, I saw Michael slashing through 2 hornets at once. His dark longsword was moving in quick bursts of sharp yet precise arcs. Anything that got too close to him was cut down in a blink. His rhythm was immaculate, and he kept connecting each one of his attacks to the next in a smooth flow. For some reason, his swordplay reminded me of calligraphy strokes. Quick and rapid, but controlled and surgical at the same time. Alexia rushed beside him, faster than the beasts facing her could react. Her bare fists cracked open chitin with the sound of snapping tree bark. Kong obviously shadowed her, tearing through hornets in feral rage. He was using a movement ability that let him dash through short distances at breakneck speed, making his attacks far more unpredictable than usual. Ray, who usually relied on his explosions, was currently stuck with only a short sword since we didn't want him blowing up the platform beneath us. He was holding his own, mostly because Lily kept yelling warnings a split second before each creature dove at him. Left, right, behind you, how many directions do these things have? He cried, swinging wildly. Vince cast enhancement after enhancement, boosting everyone's speed, stamina, strength, and occasionally bonking a hornet with a baton whenever one flew too close. Everyone was doing well, but not better than Juliana. She was in her element. Every tentacle that lashed at her missed. Every hornet that tried to fly off fell to her pinpoint strikes. Within minutes, the entire horde lay scattered across the ledge, twitching or very much dead. most slain by her. Everyone took a breath. Michael faced her, dismissing his sword. Where the hell were these moves before today? Juliana frowned at him, huffing. My leg was hurt. Also, I helped kill the two-headed serpent. I think I contributed more in that fight, Ray declared proudly, wiping his short sword. You were recording everything from a safe distance. Michael snapped. All right, enough. I clapped my hands before it devolved into another pointless bickering. Good work. Absorb as much essence as you can and let's move before another family of tentacle hornets shows up. Everyone did as told. Soon after, we resumed our descent. And that's when the real disaster struck. Not during the fight. Not when we were surrounded. Not when death was inches away. No. The real disaster struck after everything had already ended. What happened, one may ask? Oh, it was Vince. He fell. Yes, the moron fell. On flat, stable, non-threatening ground. He fell. He slipped on a rock. A normal rock. Just a rock. Whoa, he screamed. Juliana, who was closest, quickly reached out and grabbed his wrist on reflex. Except the angle was terrible. She had to twist herself halfway off the ledge to reach him, which meant. Wait, no. Vince yelped as Juliana's foot skidded, and she went over the edge with him. She made a sound that was similar to what startled cats make when you grab them too tightly, and if not for the fact that she was in the process of falling off a cliff, I might have found it cute. But before I could react, Ray dove after them like the hero of a cheap action movie. Julia, Vince, then Michael dove after him a second later. Ray, you idiot, and now there were 4 morons falling instead of 2. I pulled at my hair with deja vu-induced suffering. Oh, come on, this is getting old. Not again. Lily gasped and nearly tripped herself while trying to summon a card. Nobody jump, I'll get them, but she didn't get the chance. A golden rope whipped through the air and looped around all 4 idiots. I didn't even need to guess who it was. Only one person in this group had a functioning brain besides me, Alexia. She dug her heels into the rock, braced her entire body, and hauled the 4 morons up like she was fishing. With Kang's help, she dragged them back onto the ledge. Afterward, she lowered her lasso, dusted her hands sassily, and said in the calmest, most unimpressed tone possible, how you all managed to climb down without anyone dying when I was unconscious the first few days is beyond me. Oh, they tried. They really did try, I said, pinching the bridge of my nose before turning to the group. We've been here for weeks. And somehow, your collective IQ is still, what, 8? They made various offended noises as Alexia stepped over them like they were inconvenient tree roots. Hey, Ray tried to sit up but winced. Okay, I thought I'd grab them and fly up. Juliana hissed like an alley cat. That's why I don't help falling people. They drag you down with them. Wow, words of wisdom. Vince started throwing an actual tantrum. I don't like this place. I don't like jungles. I don't like trees or mountains or rivers. Sam, please tell me we're close to getting out of here. Please, as much as I'd love to lie, I said, we're barely halfway there. Vince closed his eyes and began cursing in his mother tongue. Chapter 290, Sweet as Raspberry. Another day passed. The rest of the climb down was as uneventful as it could have been. Vince somehow managed to not fall off the cliff for the 3rd time. Yes, I know, miracles do happen. By the end of the day, we found ourselves even deeper into the jungle. The trees here were taller than they were on the upper plateaus, and the few creatures we encountered were far more ferocious than anything we had seen until then. I'm not joking. Some creatures we fought were so dangerously powerful that they made the Tree King and the Fog Monster look like bad jokes. The haunting crimson light of the bleeding moon barely reached this region. Even the shattered sky was hardly visible through the thick canopy overhead. The whole forest was now swallowed by the darkest of shadows. And I'm not even exaggerating. Everything was so dark, visibility was so drastically reduced, that even seeing just a few feet ahead felt like a struggle. But even scarier was the fact that there wasn't much noise here. And by not much, I meant none. There was no noise. None at all. Not the distant shrieks of hidden beasts. Not the hissing of overgrown insects. Not even the rustle of leaves or the swoosh of wind. Everything was so unnervingly silent that it was beyond creepy. It was straight up scary. Yeah, I admit it. It was scary. I don't care how brave someone pretends to be, but when a jungle as dangerous as we were in suddenly becomes pitch black and silent, you feel it in your bones. Because it only means one thing. There were no prey here. Instead, the entire area was filled with predators, each one much deadlier than the last. And each one too wary to draw any attention to themselves. That's why nothing in this region made a sound. Nothing. And we didn't want to be the ones to draw any attention to ourselves either. So we also didn't make any sound. We walked in near complete silence. I noticed that the deeper we went, the heavier the air became. Temperature was already a fickle thing in the Noctvale wilds, changing back and forth between chilly and scorching from region to region. But here, in this region in particular, the excessive humidity felt cold instead of warm. Thick instead of damp, like the moisture in the air had turned stagnant and old and rotten. On top of that, I kept feeling a strange sensation crawling across my skin, making the hair on my neck stand on end. It felt like I was being watched. And I guess I wasn't the only one, because after a few minutes, Lily suddenly stopped. Michael, walking next to her in formation, halted as well and raised a fist, signaling the rest of us to cease all movement. We quickly did. For several long seconds, Lily stood unmoving. She didn't speak at first. She just turned her head slightly. Her eyes were glowing faintly in the deepest, most uncanny shade of violet, just like the runes on the origin card floating beside her. Vince and I exchanged a subtle glance. Not a word was needed to be spoken, because we all had come to know that look on her face. It meant something wasn't right. "Don't react, don't look back," she whispered. Her voice was a little shaky. "There's something behind us. It's been following us for a while." My skin prickled instantly. That slow, icy crawl I'd been feeling on my neck spread through my whole body, like someone had dunked me in cold water. Now that she'd said it, I could feel it. I could feel something standing behind us, watching us. Everyone else paled a little. Lily repeated, "Don't look back." Vince immediately tried to look back. I smacked the back of his head. She said don't. I panicked. Then panic forward. Crack. All of a sudden, a twig snapped somewhere far in the darkness behind us. Except, it wasn't far. Even though it sounded distant because of the deafening silence, I knew the noise had come from only a couple dozen steps away. Everyone froze. I felt a chill run down my spine. We were silently contemplating if now was the right time to panic, when Alexia cracked her knuckles, completely unbothered. Should we fight it? All of us stared at her. All my life, I'd heard that the House of Zinx was filled with muscleheads who all instantly resorted to violence when faced with even the smallest inconveniences. I never believed that rumor. I assumed it was a baseless stereotype. Every noble house had one. For example, common folk believed all Theospanes were egoistical, materialistic jerks. And that's not true in the slightest. Look at me. So I didn't believe the rumor about House Zinx either. Then I met Alexia. She was either the calmest, most saintly person in the room, or ready to throw hands with everyone present. We ignored her suggestion and resumed walking slowly. Michael shook his head. "Whatever it is, it's only following us for now. I don't think we should risk fighting it. Stay in formation and keep moving. Lily will warn us if it tries to attack, and we'll deal with it then." Deal with it then? Right. Great plan. I loved this plan. I would have loved it more, if it didn't suck. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, then, Samael, why don't you suggest a better plan? You're right. I would have suggested a better plan, if I had one. But since I didn't, I had no choice but to go along with Michael's suggestion. Hey, I never claimed to be some genius schemer. Sue me. We continued our fast but careful trek through the dark, rotten air stretch of the jungle. We tried our best not to make a sound, but considering we were moving through a forest, that was easier said than done. Still, nobody spoke. Not loudly, at least. We whispered, or communicated through military hand signs. And since we needed to move fast and discreetly but also without being reckless at the same time, we stopped every 5 minutes to look at, listen to, and smell our surroundings. It slowed our pace down a lot, but that was standard hunter procedure while operating covertly in hazardous terrain. So we followed it. Despite our best efforts, however, nightmarish beasts still ambushed us multiple times. We didn't see most of them until they were nearly upon us, or, in some cases, we never saw them at all. Sometimes shadows swirled into shapes and lunged at us. Other times, slit-pupiled eyes glowed in the dark ahead of us before closing in. Some beasts moved too fast to track. Some were completely invisible. Those were the worst because you didn't even feel them coming. One moment, a screech echoed from somewhere above the treetops. The next, something massive slammed into the ground hard enough to shake the soil. Or something skulked along the underbrush, looking vaguely humanoid but wrong in all proportions, before vanishing the moment anyone could raise a weapon. And this one time, we didn't hear or see or feel anything at all. The air just suddenly smelled of fur and decay, and something metallic and sharp brushed past our arms and legs, so fast and quiet it could have been imagined. Then we were shredded into minced cubes of flesh and died horribly. Or we would have died, if not for our seer. I can't stress this enough. No, really, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having someone in the party who can see the future. Really, look, I'm not downplaying anyone else. We survived many encounters thanks to Michael, Alexia, and me. Michael moved with deadly certainty and cut through the darkness, anticipating strikes the rest of us couldn't even perceive. His sword was a beam of motion that sliced open paths through the invisible terrors that seemed to loom from every direction. He truly fought like the protagonist he was. Half the time, he was the difference between life and death. But sometimes, even he couldn't handle the pressure alone. So Alexia joined him on the front lines. Her destructive prowess was on full display. Her punches were brutal enough to crack open boulders, and her kicks hit like thunder. She moved like a living storm. Yes, she wasn't as powerful as 8B rank, but she absolutely held her own against any beast unlucky enough to cross our path. And I supported them by shaping the very landscape to my will. The others were also just as useful. Especially Vince. He used this strange set of spell cards that conjured small floating orbs of light. Though they were utterly harmless on their own, they could be maneuvered remotely, buzzing like fireflies under Vince's control. In the dark, those little orbs either blinded predators, or lured them away from us entirely. So yeah, everyone contributed a lot. But we still would have died 10 times over in that dark region if not for Lily's foresight. Even if she could only see 3 to 5 seconds into the future, that was enough to dodge a killing blow or avoid a crushing weight falling on us from above. More than once, she redirected us completely out of ambushes we would have had zero chance of surviving. I can't overstate it, having her with us was basically a cheat code. No wonder she was considered the brightest future star in Luxara. I'm so glad I didn't kill her when I first opened my eyes on day 1.